So this happened.
The dawning realization that we are not fallen. We are ascended.
It's difficult to put into words exactly how I feel.
No! 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 Rachel!
So let's not beat about the bush in classifying this. The Chaos race is barefaced cut content. No one can make the limp-dicked argument that the artists were working on this one in the downtime before release. Sega's top suits have decided to slice out a part of a full-price game and hold it hostage, in order to entice pre-orders and then to sell later as DLC. I'm going to assume here that you've all heard Total Biscuit, Jim Sterling and Furious Joe bang on enough about how terrible pre-ordering and Day 1 DLC is. If not, here's a quick recap. It's a fucking cunt act. Now, I wasn't opposed to the DLC they had already announced. Each of the races in Warhammer are quite different from each other. Creative Assembly can't just swap chainmail and winged helmets around like a Mr. Potato Head doll to make a new faction like they could in every other Total War. We're talking new models, new animations, unique playstyles. That costs money, and as long as it's done the way you're ethically meant to, as in you finish the base game to the best of your ability, then work on an expansion to it after it's released, then the DLC they were proposing sounded great to me, because it wouldn't be a moustache battle pack, it would be an expansion like the ones we used to get. I said in a previous video that I term DLC under 3 categories: fluff, expansion, and bullshit. Fluff is stuff like a blood pack, a weapon skin, a new soundtrack, or having Brian Blessed announce the battle.
Drive out the Yorkish dogs!
It's meaningless odds and ends that the developers have thrown together when they have nothing else to do. They don't affect the game, and they're made after its release, and it's just there for those people that really want those things. As long as it is not being removed from the game before launch to then sell separately, I don't have a problem with fluff DLC. If it is being removed to sell separately before launch, well then it sucks, but fuck, I'll get over it. An expansion is something that we called an expansion in the old days. A company releases a game, all of a game that they plan to. Then, when that company is finished, they work on some new content to add to that game. This is what I thought they were doing with High Elves, Bretonnia, Skaven, Lizardmen, etc. And what I assumed they were doing with Chaos too. There is nothing wrong with that at all to me. And you can't sit there saying that the 4 races we thought we were going to have would not have had enough variety. Most of us have spent 10 years playing Total War with only humans in it. 4 distinct races would have been enough for me. If 4 were all that they were developing. Bullshit is what you would expect it to be, which is what they have just shown us they are doing. Developing a game, then, before release, removing large chunks of gameplay to double dip with sales. Or, in this case, to hold hostage and force pre-orders. They have removed literally a fifth of the game 6 months before release. A fifth is the harshest I've ever seen a company sink to, and I don't believe it's right at all. I don't think you will find many people who think it is. Now let's drop ethics and think about this strategically. A YouTuber known as Indie Pride, or as Milk and Cookies Total War, made a good point in Oakley's, known as THFE Productions, discussion video on this very subject. This won't be the same as Rome 2's release, because Steam now has refunds. If this game releases with all the septic grace of Rome 2, everyone can get their money back, provided they are clever enough to check on the state of the game before playing it for longer than 2 hours. So, strategically speaking, waiting till an hour before the game releases, pre-ordering to get Chaos, then waiting a few days till reviews are out, because remember it's 2 hours or 14 days for the refund, means you can get the pre-order bonus with none of the risk. There are, however, a few problems with this. First, we are assuming the reviews you can trust come out within 14 days. What if it is bad though, and you get the refund, then it's fixed 5 months down the line, but the price is the same? Then, you've lost the free faction and the unethical business wins out. Because looking now, Rome 2 is still $80 US. Shogun is still 40 for vanilla. Attila is 45. I don't think there's much guarantee of the price going down, and whether or not it ends up in a sale is anyone's guess. In Crusader Kings 2, one of the mechanics is the relationships you have with every other character. It is represented by a 200-point bar that goes from positive 100 down to negative 100. This bar is affected by the traits you and everyone else has, and also by the decisions you take. One tactic you can take to improve a character's relations with yours is to give them meaningless titles like Cup Holder, Master of Horse, which gives a +15 to relations. You can, if you're desperate, hand them bribes or even land to secure their loyalty, but that's far too expensive to ever maintain for a large kingdom. Normally, being a competent king and doing the right thing is how you keep your vassals happy. You can also strip a certain noble of their rightfully held lands and claim them for yourself. That noble might revolt, but if you're too powerful and the rest of the kingdom still likes you enough, they won't dare. Once you do that, the rest of the kingdom does dislike you for it though. You get a modifier. Stripped vassals' rightful holdings, and it gives a -20 reputation with everyone in the kingdom. In Crusader Kings 2, it was important to play a balancing act with the vassals, keep them happy enough that they never rebel, whilst abusing your power at the strategically best moments to secure your long-term position. That's what publishers' tactics these days put me in mind of. They're pushing at the community to see just how much extra they can squeeze out before people start refusing to buy the game. The problem is, with Warhammer Total War, just like with Star Wars Battlefront, they know they have a game to sell that is so irresistible that they can get away with more than if it was just another generic Total War. The modifier of selling a Warhammer game gives them +100 relations, whilst the modifier of cunt business practices isn't bad enough to turn people away. It may be poignant to point out here that in Crusader Kings, after a few years your vassals forget about what you did, and the modifier goes away. Sega have the monopoly. No one else is making Total War games. We can argue what we think is fair and what we think isn't fair forever. There are no laws to enforce that either way. All you can really do is vote with your wallet. Because up until now, people accepted Hattori. They accepted the Greek states and they accepted the Vikings. If we now accept a 5th, we better get used to accepting a 5th, then a 4th, a 3rd, a half. It would be rather rich to complain that this is the slippery slope fallacy. Even the simplest person can look around and see that this is the slippery slope reality. I would like to end on the most important point made by Angry Joe on his response to the subject. The new Deus Ex game had a similarly atrocious pre-order idea. The difference being the community's vocal and focused anger about this ended that pre-order scheme. So no one can make the argument that complaining never achieves anything. So as long as a 5th is being held to ransom, I won't pre-order and I won't buy. How many other people resolve to make that decision will decide how often that decision needs to be made. Ultimately, what will really affect how good or bad this game sells is how good or bad the actual game is. We haven't seen anything yet.